let's get started creating an interesting background for our project. The first thing I did was I gave my surface a coat of moody blue. I let that dry and then I sanded it lightly for a smooth painting surface. The next thing you want to do is you want to get out some turquoise blue, which used to be called Indian turquoise, and some Irish moss. Put a puddle out of each of those. And what we're going to do is we want to work quickly. So I'm going to thin that paint down. And it doesn't matter which one you start with. I'm starting with the Indian turquoise. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip slap. And I don't care about brush strokes, but I'm going to slip slap this along here. I'm going to take my bubble wrap and press it onto the piece just to give it that different look to the background, okay? So let's put a little bit down here. I might need to thin that paint a little bit more so it doesn't dry quite as quickly. And you can go right over sections that you've already done the bubble wrap on because it's wet, it'll blend in. Okay, so I'm going to rinse this out and I'm going to come back with my Irish moss. And I'm going to thin that down. And I'm going to slip slap Irish moss even into the areas that I already did with the turquoise. And again, I'm going to press my bubble wrap down. Makes it kind of interesting where the colors overlap each other. I'm going to press it down really good so you pick up a lot of that paint. And now what you can do too is once you've done that, you can come back and kind of stamp areas with the paint that's on your bubble wrap. Okay, so I've kind of got lines here that I want to get rid of, so I'm just going to continue to stamp with my bubble wrap over it. And I think I'm going to pick up just a little bit of the Irish moss on the bubble wrap itself and stamp around to get rid of that edge. Kinda. It's not going to go away all the way. And really, we're going to put stuff on top of it, so it really doesn't matter. But anyway, there we go. We're getting a nice, interesting background there. Just something a little different to work with, and that was all just with bubble wrap and 3 paint colors. So we want to let this dry, and we're going to put our pattern on for our design. Alright, so I applied the pattern, and you'll notice I put the pattern on for the hat and for the pumpkin only. I didn't do the moon and the stars or the lettering yet. We're going to do some more to the background, just to kind of spice it up a little bit. So I'm going to take some warm white first. And what I want to do is I want to stencil. Let me find my brush. There it is. So, and use my Punchinello, and I want to stencil some areas with random dots with the warm white. And I always kind of wipe my stencil brush out because that keeps me from hopefully not having paint bleed under the edges. So and these dots don't have to be real prominent, even though they are. But I'm just going to randomly add some areas of dots just to add some more interest to that background. And there's no rhyme or reason to how I do it or where I put it. It just really doesn't matter, just wherever you want. The only thing I can say is try to keep your areas in odd numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I need one more area. And I think I'll just put a little bit right there. Okay, so I've done that. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to take some sapphire blue and I'm going to float some shading just around my design area and the outside edge. So just a regular side load flow of sapphire blue. So just, I would use a larger brush. This is a 3/4 inch. Using my big old brush. You can use as big a brush as you feel comfortable with. I like to use bigger brushes. I'm not a little brush person, unless it's a really, really tiny area. But I'm just going to go around the design and float some sapphire blue shading. And this is just going to help to pop this little guy off the background. And it adds a little bit more interest to the background. Okay. And I'm going to go over on this side. Let some of it dry so you can bounce around a little bit. And if you're doing the shading before you paint base coat in the guy, it's a lot easier. Let's go over here. And kind of like using my fingers like a mop brush. Just want to get in those little nooks and crannies up there by his hat. Okay, so I think I've gone all the way around him. So now I want to go all the way around the outside edge with that same sapphire blue. I love these blues and greens together. And once we get the orange on, it's going to be very Halloween-y. So what I want to do now is I want to thin down the Indian turquoise blue again, and I want to spatter this piece with a little bit of that thin down turquoise. Just trying to add a little bit more interest to my background. I'm going to move up a little bit. It's not going to show up a whole lot, but you'll know it's there. I think you can see that a little. And then what I want to do is I want to spatter it again with some warm white. And that shows up a little bit better. All right. That's looking pretty good. Let's get some down here. The next thing we want to do is we want to base in our pumpkin down here with spiced pumpkin. And you're probably going to need 2 coats. So Let's just base this in. Definitely going to need 2 coats. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and base the hat in with some graphite. Okay, got my little puddle of graphite out there, so I'm going to start basing in my hat. This one you could probably get by with just 1 coat, even if you can see the background through. I've got a wayward hair on my brush. Starting to look like Halloween already, which is probably good because it's only April. And let's give our pumpkin down here a 2nd coat of spiced pumpkin. And I think that should do it. All right, so I'm going to let this dry and put the pattern on for the face. All right, so you'll notice that I put the pattern on for the face, but I didn't put the pattern on for the nose because we're going to do something a little different here. What I want to do is I want to tear out a page from an old book, and I'm going to cut the nose, the stars, and the moon out of this page from an old book. So what you can do is just trace the pattern onto the book page for the moon, the stars, and the nose. So do that, cut them out, and we'll be back. All right, so I've got the nose cut out, 3 stars, and the half moon, quarter moon, whatever it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set those aside. I don't want to lose them, so be sure you put yours someplace where you can find them. Because we'll apply those a little later. We're going to go to work on our pumpkin. I forgot to put the little lines for the division in the pumpkin, so I'm going to do that real quick. It doesn't really matter where they are, really. Alright, so my pumpkin is 3 sections. I'm going to float and dry brush some highlighting with moon yellow. So if you've painted pumpkins with me before, it's basically the way I do pumpkins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my favorite brush to dry brush with, and it could be my favorite because it's the one that works for me today. But I'm going to first dry brush some highlighting in each section of the pumpkin, and that's with moon yellow. And I'm going to go right through where the pattern is for his mouth instead of trying to go around it. I'll do this outside section. When you're dry brushing, you should have to scrub to get that paint out of your brush. And I'm going to go on this center section. And it's basically through the center of the center section. Even though it's going to get covered up by a lot of stuff, we want that highlighting in there. Okay, he looks kind of bad right now, but it'll be okay. We're going to fix him. I need to go and float some highlighting on those sections, and that's with moon yellow also. I'm going to blend it out really well. It's going to go on really bright, but it will tone down as it dries. So I'm going to do the outside edge here. And if you like to mop your floats, this would be a good time to do it. Just to mop and soften it. And then I'm going to come to that center section, and I'm going to do the outside edge of it, going right through the eyes and the mouth. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to turn my guy over and do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to do the outside edge. And I'm going to come and do inside the center. I'll go ahead and mop that, just to soften it. We are going to, while we let those floats dry, let's go ahead and go up to our hat. And since we have the turquoise on our palette and Moody Blue, let's go ahead and dry brush some highlighting on our hat. Let's do it first with Moody Blue. I'm going to go all through the center of this. Up above the belt buckle, through the center, all the way around that little curl in the tip of the hat. And I need to scrub a little bit on the brim. And now I'm not going to wash this brush out. I'm just going to pick up some of that turquoise blue, formerly known as Indian turquoise. And I'm going to dry brush a little bit brighter highlight. It's not going to be as much as was with the Moody Blue. And I'm going to keep it to the left side a little bit. On the brim, it's just going to go all along the brim. All right, we need to float some shading on our pumpkin, and we're going to do that with Country Red. So a nice side load float of Country Red, and there are several places that the shading is going to go. The first is going to go next to the highlighting on the center. So both sides. I'm going to go on the pumpkin under the hat, but what I want to make sure I do is I treat each section of the pumpkin as its own section. So I'm going to do the center section first, since there's no floats, wet floats there. I'm going to start a little ways down on the side, and then I kind of come up and under the brim. And then I go down the other side a little bit. I definitely need to mop that float. I'm going to go do the same thing in the bottom of that center section. Up the side a little bit, and yes, it goes on top of a highlight that you just did, and all the way across the bottom, and then up the side a little ways. So now I think I can go to those other sections and do the same thing, top and bottom, with a nice float of Country Red. So I'm going to start a little ways down on the side and come up and over to the center section. And the same thing in the bottom. Start a little ways up on the side and come down and around the bottom. And let's get another one in here. On the other side, we'll have this red part of our shading done. All right, So while we let that dry, we can go back up to our hat and we can float shading on our hat with lamp black. So I'm going to go ahead and float some shading in the tips of the brim with lamp black. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk that color up a little ways. So both ends of the brim. Get that lamp black shading. I'm going to go on the main part of the hat above the brim. With some lamp black shading. It's looking good already. And I'm going to go above the little belt that is going around the hat. Let's go in the tip of the hat. And again, walk that color up a little bit. Let's go below the little belt. All right, what I want to do is I want to go along this lower edge of the hat brim. Turn this little guy. You can clean up the edge of your hat brim this way too, if you need to. Right. And what we want to do is we want to go down both sides of the hat above the brim, and I'm going to walk that color over just a little bit, just to help give that hat a little bit more dimension. And then I also want to go on both sides of the top of the hat. Okay, I'm going to reinforce these little ends a little bit while I let the top of the hat dry. Just want to make them a little deeper. I'm going to come, oops, too much paint, up the other side of the hat. Okay. Now, there are some bends here, and I always like to set those in a little bit. So I'm just going to corner load my brush, my flat brush, with lamp black, and I'm just going to set down a couple of little creases in those corners, or where it turns, wherever there's a crease, a fold. Okay, so now it will look like it really is kind of folding that way. And if you wanted, you could do the same thing here on the brim, but it's kind of small, so you don't have to. Let's go back to our pumpkin, and we are going to float shading again. Every place we floated shading before, we're going to float it with burnt umber. So everywhere you floated country red, you're going to come back and float some burnt umber. And you're going to do a much nicer job than I'm doing. See, I told you you're going to do a nicer job. I'm going to just dry that real quick so I can move on to the bottoms and tops. So again, a little ways down the side and then across. So exactly the same way you did the red. You're going to do the burnt umber. All right, let's get the other two sections done in the bottom. You're probably wondering, why put the red if you're just going to go over it with brown? Because the brown would be a little too dark if you didn't have the red under it. The red makes it stay looking like a pumpkin. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and base in his eyes and his mouth with lamp black. And as usual, one eye is a little bigger than the other. They just always are on my things. And when you base in his mouth, you can go ahead and base over where the teeth are going to be. And I got really fat. It'll be okay. I think I'm going to help myself out a little bit by putting a piece of tape just so I can keep it a little bit straight. And then I can use a flat brush to paint that in. Kind of looks cute with a blue mirror mouth. Makes it a lot faster. Let's see how close I got to getting it right. I think that looks pretty good. Oh, pooh. It bled. That's okay. It's easy fix. Voila. Okay, so what I want to do is, one of the first things I want to do is I want to line a shadow above the eyes with a wash of burnt umber. So just your liner brush and some thin down burnt umber. Just want to add a little line of burnt umber over the top of the eyes, just to set them into his head a little bit. Okay. And what I also want to do is I want to float a highlight of moon yellow above his mouth. So blend it out really well. You don't want it to be real bright. It's going to go on bright, but it will tone down. So just above his little mouth. So in his eyes, I want to dry brush a little bit of warm white in the top part of his eyes. Let's get a little closer to his eyes. A little too much paint, but it'll be okay. And let's go ahead and add a little bit of a dry brush through the center of his mouth. And as long as we're dry brushing warm white, let's go back to our hat and just give it a little bit brighter highlight with warm white. And it doesn't go all the way across the hat brim, just the center 2/3 probably. And then on this lighter blue that you did, you want to pop that up just a little bit with this dry brush of warm white. So now what I want to do is I want to take my flat brush and I'm going to float some Moody Blue in the bottom of each eye. It's going to be like a C stroke. It's not going all the way down into the bottom. It's staying just a hair off the bottom edge. Okay. Okay, I'm going to take a liner brush and some of that Indian turquoise blue, and I'm just going to line a little bit of a highlight on that blue sea stroke that we just painted. So now he has some pupils, and they are going to get painted with lamp black. Because you dry brush that highlighting in there and you have the blue in the bottom, they're going to show up. So just some nice pupils, they're little ovals of lamp black. Looks kind of scared. And then he has some warm white highlights in the top of those pupils. Oh, he looks really scared. And he looks weird without a nose, I know. So we're going to fix that in a little bit. So I want to give him some teeth. And those are with warm white. So you can just paint those in. You can do them like I did them on the pattern, or do your own. And just give him a few teeth. I only gave him top teeth. I didn't give him any bottom teeth. And he didn't have braces. So there are spaces in between his teeth, and they're crooked. Okay, let's go ahead and get out a little bit of decoupage medium, and we're going to go ahead and decoupage his nose on, and we'll go ahead and put the moon and the stars on too. So I'll back up a little bit. He needs some cheeks too, but let's find his nose. So find the nose out of your pile, and all you need to do, I mean, it's just paper. Brush some decoupage medium on the surface, and then you can brush a little bit over it. You don't want to get too much. And you do the same thing with your moon and stars. Pick where you're going to have them. And they don't have to be exactly where I put them on the pattern. That's just a suggestion. Stars are the same thing. They're just suggestions where to put them. Doesn't take much decoupage. I could have put that other one a little higher, but oh well. I didn't. And this bigger one is going to go down here somewhere. Alright, so we'll let those dry. We're going to use decoupage later on for the lettering. So don't put it too far away. His nose is pretty dry already. So what I'm going to do with his nose is I'm going to give it a little wash of moon yellow. And while we let that dry, we'll go ahead and give our guy some cheeks, because he just looks, he doesn't look as good without cheeks. He needs some little cheeks. So country red, pick up a little warm white to make a little bit lighter value country red. And we're going to give him some nice round cheeks. Much better. Okay, so now my nose should be dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to float some shading on my nose with burnt umber. It's going to go down one side. And across the bottom. And we will come back and outline that nose in a little bit. Our teeth should be dry now. So let's go ahead and float across the top of each tooth with a very well blended out lamp black. And that's just going to put them inside his mouth. That looks much better. So I said we were going to outline that nose. So we want to do that with some thin lamp black. And it doesn't have to be a perfect outline. In fact, if it's not, it's even better. So you just kind of squiggly, wiggly outline that nose a little bit. And that makes his nose look so much better. Let's go ahead and give him some little eyelashes. All my pumpkins have little eyelashes. Just going to squiggle a little bit of lamp black on the top of the eye. Okay. I'm going to scrub out this little bit of a line that I have here. All right. Let's go ahead and while we're at it, let's put a wash of moon yellow on the moon and stars. Okay. Okay. And we'll come back and do some work on those in a little bit. So we need to paint our hat band. And I think I'm going to go ahead and paint it with purple cow. Otherwise, it's just not Halloween. There's no purple. Don't forget to paint the inside of the buckle. right. As you can tell, nothing is like lined up or proportioned on this guy. Okay, now we need to paint our buckle. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with Pink and Moon Yellow. Quick and easy little buckle, which I'm turning into something a little bit more than it should be, but oh well. Alright, let's go to our stars and our moon. I want to dry brush just a little bit of warm white on them. So just a little bit in the center. Don't wipe out the printing. Just add a little bit of a warm white highlight. And then on the moon, I'm going to float some shading with burnt umber. On that inside edge. The stars are going to get that shading in the bottom. So it doesn't go all the way around the star, it just goes kind of in the bottom, or what you decide is the bottom. All right, so let's go back to our little hat band, and I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on that hat band with warm white. My brush is a little wet, which shouldn't be, but oh well. It'll work just fine. And I want to pull in some pink. So I'm going to take Joyful Pink. And I think I'm just going to line some little stripes on my hat band with Joyful Pink. Just to bring another Halloween color in. Now follow the shape of the hat band. Stripes kind of curve when they get on the outside of the buckle. So we'll let those dry, and while we do that, we're going to line a highlight on our buckle with our liner brush and warm white. I'm just going to line a few lines of warm white in the top of that buckle. So we need to do our shading on our hat band, and on our, well, it's kind of the hat band. It's just got shoved up a little bit. So we're going to get out some lavender, and I'm going to float some shading on my hat band. So I'm going to go on the outside edge and next to the buckle. Turn this over to the outside edge and next to the buckle. To go inside the buckle. And I also want to go across the bottom edge. I'm going to take some warm white and a liner brush. I'm just going to line a highlight on those little stripes, just to pop up the highlight through the center a little bit. Alright, and now I need to float a little bit of shading in the bottom of the buckle with burnt umber. I lined the highlighting, but I'm going to float the shading just in that bottom edge. Alright, so what I want to do now is I want to take my liner brush. You could take a marking pen or whatever you'd like. In fact, let's go ahead and do it with a Sharpie. A black Sharpie will work just fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few more details to this guy. So like inside his nose, I'm going to add a little bit more detail lining. I'm also going to kind of roughly outline my pumpkin. And this just basically helps to tie everything together. And you see, it's not a straight line, it's not following exactly on the edge. I'm going to turn this over and go to my stars, and I'm going to outline them too. And it's not going to be a very nice, straight, neat line. And let's do this. If you want yours to be straight, you can. This is more of an not so perfect piece, which is basically all my pieces. And the moon. I also want to outline the hat, and it's not going to show a whole lot except for where you get squiggly and go out of the shape. But I do want to outline that because it would look kind of lost if it didn't get an extra outline like everything else did. Oh yes, this is much easier using a pen. I'm going to outline that hat band and the buckle. And let's see, did I do this? No. And we need to do the brim. And I'm also going to add a little extra line next to those pink lines on the hat band. Just to tie that in with the piece a little bit more. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the entire surface with this squiggly outliney line. If you want yours straight, you can get out a ruler. Okay, so we have one more thing to do to our piece, and that's the lettering. And so what you want to do is we are going to cut the lettering out. So if you make an extra copy of the pattern, then you can just cut the lettering out on that. I'm going to start by first just cutting out the word. And it's just a rectangle, it's nothing fancy, don't go around the letters. Okay. And then what I want to do is I want to cut out each individual letter. This is easy, just cut them apart. Now you just have to remember how to spell. So I'm going to cut a little bit more off this G because it has that star printed on it. If you wanted to, you could put the pattern on and paint the lettering on if you wanted to. But what fun would that be? So now I'm going to start kind of putting my lettering down and see how I want it arranged. Don't necessarily want it all lined up. So I know I'm going to have to move this over a little bit. Because that O and that N are big. Even a little bit more. That's good. And let's get Creepings on here. I think that's going to be a little bit bigger, so. Okay. Yep. So if you want, you can line them up like little soldiers. But it's more interesting if you don't. Now see, I covered up my star, but it'll be okay. I know it's there. Alright, so when I decided that I like where my lettering is, I'm going to get my decoupage medium out again. And an older brush, because I don't want to use my new brushes, my good brushes with the decoupage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to decoupage each letter in place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lick my index finger. That's why God gave you spit. And I'm going to put down a little bit of the, boy, shaky. Decoupage medium. It's really much easier than what I'm making it look like. I must have had too much soda today. And I'm just going to pick up each letter and then decoupage it into place. And I like to give it a little coat of decoupage to hold it down and get any bubbles out. And they can overlap a little bit. But like I said, if you want to paint your lettering on, that'd be fine too. This is just an easy way to do lettering. You don't have to worry about staying up on the point of your brush and getting the stroke just right. I like to cheat on lettering sometimes. Sometimes I don't. Picked up two. And of course, we're not done with this lettering. All right, so let's put away our decoupage medium and get our lettering dried. So now, this lettering is really, really white on this surface. And so what I want to do is I want to tone it down a little bit. So I'm going to take a flat brush and a very thin wash of burnt umber. And I'm going to wash over each of those letters. And that's going to help put them back into the background a little bit. Or at least move them off the foreground. And if that's not enough, we're going to do something else to them. Maybe a couple things. All right. So we want that to dry. And we're going to come back with our Sharpie. And we're going to roughly outline each of these rectangles that the letters are on. And when one is on top of the other one, you get to decide which one is on top. So just a quick outline around each of these little rectangles. Nothing too fancy. Okay. And what I want to do now is I would just kind of want to go around with my Sharpie and just kind of add some dots. No rhyme or reason to where they are, just add some more interest to this. So just dot away. Okay, that helped a lot. And so what I want to do is I want to grab my Punchinello again, and I'm going to go back to my piece, and I'm going to stencil a little bit more of these random dots around, again with warm white, just to brighten up, like kind of in the areas that got a little dark. I'm also going to go kind of over the lettering in areas. So just add a little bit more interest to that background and make the background pop a little bit more. I didn't do a thing because I didn't have any paint in my brush. Well, it kind of did a little thing. But wherever you want, just add a little bit more. All right, I think I want to take this border and do it one more time. Just again to add a little bit more interest. And this one is not going to follow the same line as the other one. It's going to be even more exaggerated in its wiggle. So get a little crazy with it. You can do it. All right, yeah, I like that. I'm also going to do that to the stars. I'm going to give them a little bit more of an outline. Or what stars I can see anyway. You know, there's one right there that I covered up. And the moon gets another outline. There's a little bit of moon down here. All right. So let's look at this and see what else we want to do to it. I think what I want to do is, and you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to write on the background here and there just some words. I'm going to write boo here and there. And I'm going to write, where do I want to write it? I want to write eek somewhere. Maybe here. And see. Scary. What else? Anyway, think of some pumpkin type words. You know, I didn't outline his eyes. I'm going to outline his eyes a little bit with the squiggly. Okay, so I think that's good. Then you can write whatever you want in the background. One of the most important things to write is your name. So be sure while you have that pen that you go ahead and sign your piece. So there you go, a quick and easy piece where we used some items to give this piece a little bit more interest, and it's kind of half mixed media, half painting. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next month when we'll be doing a Christmas piece. So season's creepings to you all.